Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary pals, please give a warm welcome to our guests, friends, family on today's wonderful episode of Creative Recharge. Today's guests are, you know him, I love him, my brother and technical producer, Tom! Yay! Future guests to be determined, maybe after they have staff meetings today. So,
show up as you can.
exactly. That's my theory. Yes. So here we are.
Here we are again. We are talking about romance.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
The unacknowledged 800-pound gorilla in storytelling.
Yes. I want to go ahead and thank everybody for coming, who is here, who gets to show up later, to even if you just wander by. I'm so glad you made it. And we love that so many people watch the show on the replay. We love that you take time out of your busy day to spend hanging out with us as we explore subjects that are near and dear to our heart. We hope you'll get something out of it. My goal every show is for people watching, people interacting with us to, at the end of the day, say, I learned something today. That's always our goal. So please feel free to give us the feedback as you can. So, how is the weather?
Well, we share the same weather. It's wet.
It's wet. Is it still raining today? It's
Yeah.
about 80 degrees outside and muggy. It is 67% humidity in my room, and I feel it. This hair may not stay down because it is just so it is very tropical today,
To say the least.
Please let us know in the chat if you feel up for it to let us know about your weather, because it brings me happiness.
By the way, apparently Nia noticed the placement on the image.
Sitting in the chairs.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. So, Tom, would you like to introduce yourself, or are you good?
I mean, I'm always here. I do a lot of little, technical production,
Yes.
update videos and little shorts we do. And, occasionally help with some creative development with, all of our friends.
Yeah. We love to help with story development. Right now, I am working in editing to get our Velo project onto Velo. And so Tom is at the helm helping our friends with story development, and I'm coming in as a secondary role for that right now, just because I'm trying not to get overwhelmed. So that is what... Hi, Nia. It's like we just saw you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tom writes, I write. Okay. I was bragging about what the fanfic you've been writing this week, Tom.
Oh, that poor character.
I love what you are doing. I'm getting to see, 0 drafts. And okay. So let me tell you a little bit about me as a person. I did not come from a family that praises often or really gives compliments to each other's face. So it's something I've had to learn how to do as an adult, since it's not something I grew up with. So when I tell you that Tom's 0 draft is excellent, y'all believe me. It is a delight to read, and I feel very fortunate to get to be in at the very beginning on this story that I hope he will one day publish. Cross my fingers. Thank you for all the applause. You're so cute. Yes. So, so that is me. I'm Glory. You've wandered on my channel. If you don't know who we are, hi. I'm Glory. That's Tom. I'll eventually get these right. And we
Just
are
point away from the person you want to point to, and it will usually go to them.
I have to remember that I need to point to the mic, that's where most of the people are most of the time. So even though the channel says Glory Writes the Blues, Tom is the one who came up with this name, by the way. But it is us doing it, not just me. It was my vision, but it was always a team project, and we work as a team, and we are creative writing partners as a team. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope you will get what you're looking for out of this. Be sure to let us know when you have questions. Type them up. You can also message me. Normally I'd say, oh, you can message me on Instagram or Twitter. But today with, Facebook and whatnot being questionable, I don't know. Message me how you want. If you email me, let me know so I know to check my email, because I don't have my email open during shows.
But you can always find us on Discord.
You can always find us on Discord. We have a Discord server. Did you know? And because I spammed all my friends when I set it up, I'm not sending anyone a Discord invite until they ask. Yes, y'all, it's good. It's real good. Hello, Nikki, and hello, Maggie. Yes, StreamYard appears to be working for us. So whatever problems there may have been, maybe, hopefully, it looks like they fixed it. We'll see what happens. Tom's here in the chat doing double duty because I like to say it. Megan's here. Hello, sweetie. It's like I just saw you. And Nia. My sweet Nia. Oh, what a treasure. So, hello, Riding Violet. How are you doing? Thank you for the claps. Oh, wait, I overlooked. Diana, hello, sweetie. How is your neck of the woods? Hello, Carrie. What you making for dinner? I definitely want to know. All right. Oh, and then there is Eva. Yes, we all hope Tom publishes. Okay. So, quick summary of the show. For October and November, what we're going to be going over, I have my handy dandy notepad, is we're going to be going over genre fiction and writing genre fiction or writing to market. I say that, and yet, contemporary drama fiction is definitely an episode we're going to go over October 21st. And people don't think of that as a genre. It's sort of a catch-all drawer. If it doesn't fit anywhere else and it's contemporary, it's set in the current time period, it goes there. But I feel like there's actually a bit more nuance to it, especially since there's usually a drama focus in contemporary fiction.
Yeah.
And also, going by the feedback I got as a librarian, both from adult as well as middle grade and high school readers, I feel like contemporary is its own genre, because readers who like reading contemporary are very specific about liking contemporary. They don't necessarily want paranormal in there. They're very specific about, they want drama, but they want contemporary life. And they preferably would like dramas that somehow they can connect to, that reflect some of their own life experiences. So if they've never been to a theme park with roller coasters, they're not really into a contemporary story that heavily features a roller coaster. At least going by the feedback I received for years working as a librarian, and before that as a teacher. And actually before that as a video store owner, where we had a used books section. Essentially, I set up a little used bookstore because, of course I did. So I feel like there's not enough used bookstores. Look, I love books. You love books. The library doesn't always have the books we're looking for. And new books can be kind of pricey. And if you love books, you want all the books. So if somebody stopped loving them, let them move on to a new home. That's what I say. So, hi, Diana. Let's see. My neck of the woods is wet. It's storming here. Wind, lightning, dreariness, all the Halloween vibes. Ooh, maybe it's time to put on like a pot of cider with some spices floating around, bubbling. I'm throwing that out there, In my mind, you've got that on the stove, Diana. Even if you're like, no. Hello, Spence. How are you doing, sweetie? Hello, Heather. Checking in before heading to the bus stop. Is it wet where you are? Because oh yeah, I can hear the wind and the rain hitting. The wind is pushing the rain against my window. Yep. Hello, Stephanie. How are y'all doing?
In some state.
It's in some state. Is it wet there too? We're still going over the weather. So that is the idea of the whole show, is we're going to explore genre. And because even if you're not trying to write in a specific genre, I think it is important to have a basic understanding of all the genres in case later a story seems to need a little bit of a genre mashup. Because there are genres that used to exist that we don't really call a standalone genre anymore. Adventure novels and adventure stories used to be huge in the 1800s and through the first half of the 1900s. I feel old when I say that, since I was born in the 1900s. But adventure stories were the biggest genre. And now we do not consider it a standalone genre anymore. It's more like an aspect of other genres, which really tells you about culture.
Yeah.
Heather says it hasn't rained here for days, so it's hot. Oh, well, honey, I'm pretty sure. I may be wrong here, but I think you're getting some rain soon because we've got it, so maybe it'll head toward you soon. North Texas, opposite of wet here, you also have it dry. Are you on the east side or the west side of North Texas? Spence is supposed to be a 10K day for me, but it's 4 p.m. and I've only got 200 words so far. You know what? There's always tomorrow. And 200 words is still 200 words you didn't already have. Those are valuable words. Because you got to make clay before you can mold clay. 83 and muggy. Yes, we've got 80 here and super muggy right now. Let's see. Eva says 76 and mostly sunny, mostly cloudy, but the sun has been peeping most of the day until fairly recently.
Actually sounds nice there.
Yeah, that sounds nice. We both clicked on the same time. Across the river from Oklahoma, Gainesville. Okay. Yeah, so pretty dry. Yeah, you're right. He says it's 82. A lot of people in the low 80s, high 70s here. Of course, we're like a lot of people are essentially in the bottom half of America here today. So it's raining in Michigan too, but it's also 60 degrees. So it's just sticky, muggy, and I'm grumpy about it. Is it time for some tea?
I was going to say.
Hot cider? I'm just throwing that out there.
It sounds like some form of cinnamon. You need to imbibe some cinnamon and maybe some ginger. Help fight off that mugginess.
If you're not into cinnamon, may I highly recommend green cardamom.
Yeah.
Yep. We had a brief rain, but now it's sunny. Very nice.
But yeah, I thought like part of this season is also to kind of get into the tropes of, especially like if you go back to the episode where we talked about the Addams Family and Men in Black. There is an amazing amount of story that's told in the Addams Family movies, in part because the director relies on tropes to convey all the standard information. And so the only thing the movie really has to show is what makes it different. And so that actually allows them to condense a lot of information into a short piece of time, and the rest can be spent on world building and story narrative and all the parts people really show up for.
Right.
And so we also want.
No, go on.
And so we really wanted to also mention like tropes, and also if you notice in your story that you're using a bunch of these tropes, it may help direct you into what genres this type of story might best fit in. Because as Gloria was saying about contemporary fiction, people have very specific interest in why they like that genre.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, romance works because it gives those readers what they want. They expect certain tropes. They are not upset to hear, you know, why don't you tell them about how romance books are, I wouldn't quite say advertised, but, you know, the way the blurbs are done on a romance book.
Oh, you mean where they list the tropes?
Yes. Unlike almost every other book, romance novels in the hand will tell you.
Yeah, the blurb, on the back cover, or on hardcover romances, which are so rare, but they'll tell you literally the successful way I was instructed years ago on how to write back cover blurbs for romance novels is you need to list the top 3 most popular tropes that are in this book. And then write it out. You got the tropes, you know, and like the shorthand names for them. You don't need to like list it longhand. And then you need to figure out how to make out of 3 or 4 sentences, how to be able to list all these tropes as you construct 3 or 4 sentences for your back cover blurb. That's what I was told. Because those readers will pick it up. They'll give you 1 paragraph essentially worth of their time. Because back then it was the majority of romance novels were sold at grocery stores while people waited in line to check out. So you have, in the time it takes the next person in front of you to check out, you've got only that before, you know, you got to keep loading the, you know, conveyor belt or something.
Oh, look, there's...
Yeah, as Spen says, I'm in a paranormal romance group on Facebook, and people ask for suggestions by asking specifically what tropes they want to read. Yep, that is how romance readers, they really do. So this was not the season 3 I had originally planned. But 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, Tom sits down and goes, I have an idea you're going to hate. And I was like, go on, then. And this is where he made his pitch about, instead of everything we planned, that we've been planning for 6 months, because we've been planning this season for 6 months. Instead of that, number 1, I want to rename the show. And number 2, let's do genres. And that way we'll have movie and book recommendations. And let's really explore these. And I'm like, I hate it, but yeah, you're right. That's a better idea than what I had. We may still one day do what I had been, you know, working on and researching for months. We may one day do it, but not this season. So this is what we're going to do instead. It's all right. It's fine. Everything's fine. But essentially it meant I had to throw out everything we were doing and start over from scratch. And, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I thought about it. The more I thought about it, honestly, the more I love this idea of Tom's of let's really explore genres. I definitely could do, as a writer, I could do with really exploring what is genre writing in each of these genres as we explore them together. So, because y'all know I do research throughout the week. I love research. Research is how I relax and meditate. So for this episode, we're going to talk about romance. And we're not just talking about if you're wanting to write specifically a romance novel or a romance story, but even if you're just interested in injecting a little romance in a story of any other kind. You can have a little bit of romance in contemporary. You can have a little bit of romance in horror. You can have a little bit of romance in you name it.
Is there any kind of movie where they have not at least attempted to cram a romance storyline in there at the same time as everything else?
I'm really ticked off that they put it in Loki. They're siblings. That's disgusting. Anyway, I'm still salty about it. Okay, it's fine. It's not fine, but I will be okay. Anyway, so that is the summary for today's episode. Is we're going to explore romance, and not even just like the genre as a big whole, but also what is the bare minimum you need to do to inject a little bit of this genre in a story? And I think that's important because the more you know when not to do it, when to do it, how to do it. So that's why I do think like this episode is very important, is very cool. Please, though, anytime you think of any questions, please put them in the chat or please message us. Message me on Discord if you don't want to, publicly message it. And we will try to explore these questions together because I don't know what other people are thinking of. I've essentially been reading romance since 6th grade. I was reading them a book a day. So Eva says, I went round and round with genres while creating the index. There are so many subgenres, but romance is a huge umbrella. It is indeed.
Well, I mean, and one thing I also wanted to get up about these genres is that, like when you say the romance genre, it does not preclude any other genre from being in that story.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a romance adventure story. You can have a romance mystery, a romance paranormal. It's just that when
you can even have romantic memoirs. You can also, I have actually, and this is true, I have read technical manuals that included romance between objects, and they weren't just magnets. But you know what? It made it memorable. It made it a much more enjoyable read for reading a otherwise very dry technical manual of there was a whole narrative going on, and frankly, I was living for it as I'm learning how to like construct this thing and operate this machinery. I was like, I wish sewing machine manuals were written this way. So you can inject a little bit of romance in literally anything. The love tomatoes have for basil. It's real.
Yes. Of just because we're talking about one, it doesn't mean that it precludes any others.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, you have a lot of subgenres, which are simply, all right, we've got the primary story narrative type we're going to go through. And then we're going to add in different aspects. It's just like when you're cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Gloria and I were watching a Japanese YouTube for a lot this past week called Kimono Mom, and she was making this dish called Doria. And what we noticed is that this dish is very much, from her point of view, the cook, the YouTuber, this was an au gratin style dish where, we're taking rice and we're adding cheese and vegetables and meat to it. From our perspective, this is a casserole that, is very popular, at least in the South, of cheesy chicken and rice.
With broccoli.
This is a standard down here. We have our own views on how to make it, but it's the same ingredients. It's different ways to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what genres are and tropes within that genre. And people are happy to see it there's particular types of cheese people want in a cheese casserole dish. They are not interested in camembert or brie in a cheese casserole.
There's too many competing flavors for one. And the cheese does tend to win, but it doesn't actually show off the cheese that well either. Like a brie.
And so it helps if you know what your what the strengths are of a genre, just like the strengths are of taste of foods, so that you can better mix them. I mean, if there's one thing romance writers are not interested in, unless it is a very specific subgenre, is what's a twist.
Yes.
They will revolt. They will find out where you live. They will send you a lot of angry mail.
So that's essentially our summary of the whole season of this show. We hope that you will plan to spend some time with us every week. If you are having a good time, if you like it, please consider liking. If you haven't already subscribed, we would love for you to subscribe. We've gotten so many new subscribers recently. So welcome, welcome. And if you are enjoying this, you find this video helpful or useful, please consider sharing it with friends, family, anybody you think that it might be useful to. We'd love to, have a wider audience. So let us continue with what we like about this genre, including our hot takes. Eva says not to be confused with lust, which is erotica as a genre. If lust leads it, it's not romance. If happily ever after, happy for now, control the plot's arc, it's romance, genre, or subgenre. If romance is a strong theme, but happily ever after, happy for now doesn't lead the plot, it's probably contemporary. Yes, romance readers do get real salty if there's no happily ever after or happy for now.
Oh, so much salt.
Mm-hmm. And yet, that's not how it used to be. Backstage, before the show, we were talking about in Little Women, I believe it is, I think it's Beth, but, don't quote me on that. It has been a few years since I read it, but Beth talks about a romance story she's reading, and she absolutely loves it, but it's a tragedy. It ends in someone's death, or maybe everybody dies. I don't remember. And Joe is like, that sounds terrible. And Beth is like, no, it's so beautiful. I love it. Okay, so a romance is, at the end, the reader goes, oh. It's a total fantasy, but like culturally, our definition of romance has changed. Even in America, it has changed over the last 200-300 years. It's actually dramatically changed. So in the mid 1800s, it was unusual for a romance to have a happily ever after or even a happy for now. The norm was all romances must end in tragedy. That was the norm. People got salty.
No one lives happily.
Yeah, people got salty if it didn't end in tragedy, okay? So let's think about that. Like, that is a very big difference from now, 150 or so years later. And again, I am not casting judgment any which way on this. We like what we like. It's just what is a cultural norm does change over time. And what we consider happily ever after or happy for now in America may not be a requirement in other cultures, other countries. So it's just something to keep in mind. And it's just something that I'm just pointing out to be aware of, that these things change over time. So I have no idea what 20 years from now will bring. So what we're saying right now about if you're writing for market is not necessarily forever. And in fact, I'd be shocked if it was. Yeah, Jane Austen books don't have happy endings because that's how life sucked, y'all. Everybody felt like that was, life sucking was norm. You die miserable and in pain. That's the norm. And nobody thought it was strange. They thought it maybe was a bit sad that is our existence, but that was just how it was. And now things have improved. Just like to say how much I absolutely love antibiotics. I love vaccines. I love air conditioning. I'm really into like the leaps and bounds we've made with sewage and sewage management. I mean, it is so wonderful to have that piped out. It really is. Also, not having to go to a well for water or a river. That's fantastic. Oh, I hate lugging things. I'm good at it, but I hate it. So our worldview has dramatically changed even in just 100, 150 years. Yes, Jane Austen wrote to market at the time.
Oh, yes, there was very much market.
There's correspondence. She did write to market. She was specifically writing to market. So she knew what she was doing. Very proud of Jane. So
let's say, should we talk about our favorite parts of romance?
Is this where I get to put the hot take roundup?
Yeah, I guess so.
I want to use the hot. It's been 6 months since we've gotten to use this. I want to use it. What's your hot take about romance?
Romance to me is aspirational. It is a.
Oh, we caught a Laura.
Oh, look who we got! Just in time.
Hello.
Hey, Laura.
Good to see you.
You too.
But for me, romance is aspirational, as you were saying. Like, you end all romance stories, if they're good romance stories, no matter the time period, you kind of end with this, this sort of peaceful, I want that. And to me, that's what makes it a good romance, is because deep down, as you know, there's a lot of memes now about humans will pack bond with everything. It is just part of our nature, and romance is sort of the quintessential version of that. Of we want to bond with someone, we want to know that they want to bond with us. And so that's the entire point of a romance story to me, is how you find someone you weren't expecting to bond with.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
You know, hence Romancing the Stone.
Yes.
Two people do not live in the same world whatsoever, do not get each other's worldviews much, but in this adventure, they get each other and they can trust each other.
Mm-hmm. They can rely on each other. Yeah.
And then like the subparts we'll get into it afterwards of, you know, my particular favorite tropes.
Yes. What I love about romances, I do love that feeling at the end. Oh, I love it. I love I love these crappy little seasonal romance movies. Oh, somebody has endangered Christmas. And I'm like, yes. Or Halloween may be ruined and they'll cancel Halloween if only somehow this romance will fix it in our little town. Yes.
Halloween Town, anyone?
Is it sacrilege that I've never seen it?
I am surprised of all people you haven't seen. I mean, it's a look.
Thing
at the same time, it is a very cheesy movie.
Oh, it's so cheesy.
It is.
It's like extra cheese on top of your macaroni and cheese. Like, it's so cheese. It just dives into the liquid cheese. It's so cheese. But yeah, it's fun to watch. It's like we have all 4 or 5 Halloween Town movies on the hard drive. Like,
there were that many.
I know. I didn't know.
I thought
either,
there was
actually.
2 or 3.
I only knew about the 2.
It's still better than Land Before Time. What are they up to? 20,
15,
25?
14? I don't know.
Is that all?
I don't know. 25? Whatever they
I'll
got.
look it up.
Yeah. Laura, look it up. So my hot take on romance is, okay, what I love about romance delivers. Romance promises you tropes and they deliver, because that is the entire premise of why this genre is successful.
There's only 13 Land Before Time movies?
Disappointed with them.
Okay, what universe are we in?
The wrong one. We're in the wrong one. That's all. It's okay.
They're only 13. It feels like 20.
It feels like it should be double digits by now. Well, like 21 more. So that is what I really love about romance, is it promises, it comes through on the delivery, and readers always appreciate it. You know, there's a lot of times where readers will say, oh, I want this, and then when you give it to them, they don't want it. But romance readers, they're like, no, I want it, and then they appreciate it when they get it. I really appreciate that about romance readers. So that is my hot take about romance. Laura, do you happen to have any hot takes you'd like to share with us? It's not required, but you know.
So I rarely watch or read a romance. The only romance I consume pretty much, besides Pride and Prejudice, and like that's the only Jane Austen one I really like. And
or just Austen Land to watch. I mean, it's a great summation of all of them.
I haven't seen Austen Land either.
Austen Land is fun.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You actually are missing out.
You're deprived, honey.
No. What's that one rom-com with David Tennant and Merida, voice actress? It's in the Hebrides, and they're all Scottish, and oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Offhand, all I can think of is, Nativity 2.
No, like there's the toilet that's haunted by the undead cow, and
it's something about a fake fiance or something. Yeah,
he's
I
a
remember
writer
that.
who
Oh
wrote about this
yeah,
island.
okay, I remember that one now.
Yeah,
and they dress up the
Really?
tower
It is
to
actually
be
fun.
like the book.
that one is not honestly a bad one. That's actually a pretty good rom-com
Like,
as far as
Yeah.
rom-coms go.
Those are the only two romantic things that I consume besides fan fiction.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know why, but like Christmas Prince and stuff like that has no appeal to me whatsoever.
I get that of like, but again, there is a certain crossover between romance and contemporary readers. So
I don't read contemporary.
And so, like, contemporary readers are very specific about what they want out of contemporary. And sometimes romance readers are that way too, of like, no, don't give me something I can't relate to. So if it's a romance that has international travel and that reader has never traveled internationally, nor do they want to, they're not going to enjoy that book. It has to be like relatable. Because again, you at the end, you need that feeling of, oh. I mean, I live in a small southern town, so you give me a romance set in a small town and I'm already there. I'm like, yeah, I live here. What you got? The mayor should also be, running the ambulance service and moonlighting as a grocery pack
You
boy.
said mayor, and I immediately thought of the mayor from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah. I wish I had a turnable face. So, but yeah, like I am used to that sort of story, but I know people who've always lived in big cities. They're like, I can't relate to these small town romances or even contemporary novels. And that makes sense. So I get it that with romance, there actually needs to be a lot of diversity among romance writing in order to appeal for readers to be able to find that which appeals to them.
See, for fan fiction romance that I read, it's characters I already love.
Yeah,
I already know their backstory. You can twist their backstory, whatever, but I know the basics. And so I know the world. Like, I'm going in for the world aspect of it, and then the romance can happen, and it's really fun. But
no, just when you say the words fan fiction romance, my brain first just goes, wait, are you talking about /fic?
No.
I don't trust that.
Isn't /fic more the erotica side?
Yeah, exactly. This is like, what are we?
Like,
is there actual genuine romance
fanfic? Huh?
Is there actual genuine romance fanfic?
Yes. You have to dig.
By the way, Nia's wondering, are there really that?
They are, because you know what? That cash cow is still giving milk.
I think it was Jenny Nicholson did a video of every single Land Before Time movie and ranking them in order of how much she liked them.
I took what was it? It was your birthday, wasn't it? Where I took Tom to see the first Land Before Time movie. I did not choose to take him. Our father said I had to. What? What did you say, Tom?
Yeah, that was it.
Remember which birthday it was for you?
Oh, it had to have been like my 4th or 5th birthday.
Yeah. And he wanted to sit in the first row.
Back when my neck could still crane without getting stiff.
It's like you can't even see everything because it's like disappearing. It's
the last movie I saw in the front row, because that was the only seats left, was a movie called Man on a Ledge. So he's looking down the whole time and we're looking up the whole time. It's just like, this is so weird.
So weird. But also, like, since we're talking about Land Before Time, I want to just mention, you can have romance that's not what I would call sexual romance.
I thought you were saying not human.
You can have that too. So there is a friendship kind of romance in the Land Before Time, the original one. And I always liked that, of these people, these strangers, these little kids, dinosaur babies, becoming friends and learning they can trust each other, they can depend on each other, and they care for each other. And I like those sort of friendship romances too, that are not just, what I would consider more of sexual romances. Those friendship romances used to be far more popular. So in the 1800s, that was a lot of what you got. Like if you wanted a happily ever after, you were going to have to go for a friendship romance, because sexual romances all end in tragedy. Since to marry for romantic reasons would be ridiculous, apparently. Let's see, Spence says, I saw that movie in the theaters too, Laura. I was in the front seat and everything too. Oh, wow. Yes, I agree. And Hunger, yeah.
Shirley, you want to talk about readers' expectations and what makes some salty and some agree? That romance at the end, the way it finished, definitely split that audience really hard.
Mm-hmm.
We were surprised at, because essentially they were looking for happily ever after, and Gloria and I, who've grown up, understanding what it is to be oppressed, are like, no, that's actually pretty good in that's the best they could expect. These are two really traumatized people. This is their happily ever after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people would come in having read the third book and like, I want to lodge a complaint.
Yes.
At the library. And I'm like,
so many times.
Are you wanting to fill out a censorship form? No, I just want you to hear me. Okay, give me a sec to check in this person. And then I will listen to you complain about the ending of the book. And they're like, how did you know it's the ending? I'm like, because that's what everyone complains about. The only people who don't complain about the ending is myself, my brother, and one other reader. Our entire county, everybody was complaining about the end of the third book of the Hunger Games series. Yeah, and it was me and Tom and one guy. We're like, this is the best you could hope for. I mean, PTSD is real. This is, they live in a horrible world. What else are you going to get? Which was kind of actually the view in the 1800s about romance. That's why sexual romances had to end in tragedy, because they're like, how can you have a stable marriage when feelings like love can fade, but now you are, contractually obligated. Your marriage is a legal binding agreement and you're stuck. That
let alone jealousy.
Yeah, jealousy. That was the view of a common viewpoint back in the 1800s in America, as well as at least parts of Europe. I haven't really done a ton of research on that because I did not care. But I did do a little bit because my mother, when I was a teenager, used to bribe me to read classic novels in the hopes of educating me. And I usually could get money for reading these tomes. And there's a bit of romance in Moby Dick, friendship-wise. It's a masculine romance. And my mother wanted me to understand that. There's The Red Badge of Courage is another one with a masculine form of romance in it. And not that I enjoyed reading these, but, so my mom did have to listen to me. But, she wanted me to be familiar with, essentially, American fiction. I thought it was kind of interesting that this is how men felt free to express their friendship love with each other in the 1800s. And that was kind of interesting to at least know what the conversation is. So, yeah.
So, Roy has his food bowl right now.
Is he let me sing you the song of my people? It's empty.
It's very empty and it rings very loudly.
Poor baby.
But, the type of romance that I like more is the Gothic romance.
Mm-hmm.
So the more...
Is that like romance with a ghost? What is that? What is Gothic romance to you?
So the one I wrote, one of the love interests, it's a guy and a girl. Halfway, or more than halfway through, the guy dies. And then she ends up with the ghost. Maybe. It's hinted that may have been what happened. But
so kind of like the Ghost and Mrs. Murr?
I don't know.
Oh, really? I was thinking of High Spirits.
You love classic movies and you've never watched The Ghost and Mrs. Murr? It's on YouTube because YouTube keeps going, don't you want to watch it? I'm like, I'm familiar with this movie. I used to watch it as a child when I was sick. But yeah, the captain is dead and I think Mrs. Murr has moved into a lighthouse and I guess I don't remember exactly why he's haunting a lighthouse when he's a captain. Did the lighthouse not exist? Did somebody not light it that day? I don't know what happened. But yeah, and it's a bit of a romance if I remember correctly. Yeah, there's tension going on. Yes. But it's a black and white film. As I said, I'm almost 100% certain it's on YouTube, or it was 2 months ago when YouTube was like, and I'm like, I'm good. Also, there's a weird negligee scene. I highly recommend everybody watch it. And let me know if you think it's like, what was that about?
I don't know.
Remember, it's the 40s, so what was that about? How did they get by the censors?
The romance that I like is the super squeaky clean romance, but with darkness around it.
Right.
So, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's gas lamp, basically. So, like, the dirty city of London in the Victorian era, and, like, despite the odds, they fall in love with each other, and then somebody dies, and then it's just so tragic, but it's such a beautiful romance.
I mean,
but
that's so Victorian right there. Like,
yeah, like, yeah. I don't know if that doesn't even count as romance anymore. So
not really now. I would say that it would be classified more as a love story rather than a romance.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that it's a romance. I think it is a romance because it was considered a romance at its time. I mean, these are not meant to be historical fiction. They were contemporary at the time. See, Spence says, when I worked in the library, we used to play a game where we go around and find the cheesiest looking romance novel we could find and read the back as dramatically as possible. Oh, yes, they are tinglers. Yeah, paranormal romance with era-specific themes, steampunk, or the years you'd expect it. That's how I picture gothic romance. Spence is recommending check out Jennifer Cruz's Maybe This Time and Wild Ride. They're like adjacent to that kind of vibe. Cool. They're Halloween romance. They're my Halloween romance yearly reads. Very cool. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking, Eva. Jack the Ripper without the death and murder, maybe with the death and murder. Because I have certainly enjoyed a few historical.
Jack the Ripper that would have happened for a romance for me is the girl in the romance looks like they would be targeted, like they're in that, what do you call it, that demographic of what's being targeted. And so
yes,
the male lead and her are like, we got this, we can catch Jack the Ripper. And then they have their like crazy shenanigans going in. They're like, I will come for you, don't worry. Oh no, he's too late. Oh, I don't know. That's not even romance now. That's just sad.
It's not really considered romance now, but I would consider it romantic. It's very classically romantic.
Oh, so speaking of being salty consumers, I still remember you got on some Discord or somewhere a book, a story someone wrote. And you've told me it's not anyone we know. Because I was like, who wrote this? I can't find the author of this. And I'm talking to her, I was like, I don't know what they were going for. This. Because if it's a romance, this is a failure of a romance story to me, because they get together and are fairly, pretty much together within the first quarter of the book. And it's like, that's not a romance. And then they spend the rest of it just sort of solving this mystery. And it's like, all right, the best I could figure is that this was at least originally supposed to be a fanfic for how the Scooby-Doo gang got together. And this is just, who are the main two? Oh, the lead characters that are not, Shaggy and Scooby,
Velma, Fred.
Daphne and Fred. This is like how Daphne and Fred got together. Because they both really have these vibes, but in a modern retelling. But it's like, what is this? Other than, I could see this as fanfic for Scooby, for a modern live action Scooby, like we're taking it serious this time.
He was very salty about it.
I was so confused because, again, I was expecting one genre, and I ended up in a different genre.
Yeah. I've never been able to, like, write a novel-length romance. Like, sometimes I can have it as a subplot, but it's very hard. Like, okay, I dated a guy for a couple of months maybe and never kissed him and then ran away to college. So, like, I have, like, no experience in this. And so all of my romance writing is like, maybe it could happen like this. So it's like, I have no experience to draw upon. So I have issues.
I agree with Eva. Asexual romance exists. It is a thing. And in fact, I have inadvertently, unintentionally been finding out more and more people I know who actively write romance, who are paid to write romance, are in fact asexual, or at least exist under the asexual umbrella. And I'm like fascinated by that, of like, So that's a kind of interesting unintentional survey. But yeah, as well as actual asexual romance, which I think is just, friends being friends. So that is a thing. It is a real thing. Cordy's fantasy series, The Ashford Archives, has an asexual lead with some romantic elements. Yep.
We have probably need to go on a break shortly. And when we come back, we will continue our discussions of what is romance and romance stories. And we'll talk about demi-romantic stories.
Mm-hmm.
Or, Gloria and I just consider the 80s silhouette romance, where it ends with a kiss.
Yes. So maybe now might be a wonderful time to get something to drink. Perhaps a snack. It is that time of day. Perhaps a bio break. Maybe a little walk around if you are not in the part of the country that is drenched. And we'll meet y'all back here in approximately about 10 minutes. Yeah?
There's so much fog.
Yo, wow. Yeah, you're right. It looks lovely.
At first, I thought that was snow.
No, it's fog.
Wow, you're right. That is in the middle of the day. Well, I guess it's like later in the afternoon now, but
yeah, but it's been like that all day.
Yeah. So we're going to take a break and we'll meet y'all back here. The second hour, we are going to talk more about genre, specifically romance. So we'll see y'all back here. beep, beep.
barking.
Beep, beep, beep. I did not time my last bite right.
Are these the pumpkins at Disney World? Because it looks like the bunting from Disney World.
It does look like them.
Doesn't say. But I agree, it does look like the bunting. Sweet, sweet baby Roy.
I know. Maybe I should feed him an hour early.
He's like, can't you see the sun is not here? That means it is time to eat.
I know. It's getting darker earlier and earlier.
It's his first autumn.
It is!
Baby's first autumn.
His first ever October.
I hope that you are doing something for dress up for him. Because, like, he can never go to therapy. So he can never tattle on you. And at the very least, you could get, like, they have these really cute, like, collars that are, like, seasonally themed. I've seen, like, spooky ones and stuff.
Okay, Eva, I have so many questions about this concept. Clean over smut, and then she says, if I wrote it, I'd write clean and steamy, though. 2 huge markets. I was like, what exactly? How do you combine clean and steamy? I'm really curious. If you have any examples, I would like to read it. Is that what you just?
Cleaner. Sorry.
Is that where you just get people all hot and bothered?
Isn't If the Broom Fits a Halloween themed romance? Or okay.
They've lost their passion for Halloween, and the romance must spark to save their love of Halloween.
I love it. That sounds.
I mean, yeah, I'd go with that one.
Janitor main character song.
Yes. If I have to clean up one more room of streamers, I'm just gonna light the place on fire.
Broken showers, Tom. It's all steam and no water. Okay. I was thinking for the second hour, I definitely want to dive into tropes because I don't know of any genre of storytelling that focuses more on tropes than romance writing. Like, they live and die with tropes.
2 people, 1 bed. Huddle for warmth.
I love Baby on the Doorstep. Sometimes it's the wrong doorstep, which is even better.
That's an 80s classic, if there ever was.
Wrong doorstep. Like, is there a right doorstep to leave a baby on? Anyway, that's a whole nother matter.
Secret Prince.
Secret Prince. Oh my gosh. Some people make their careers off of Secret Prince stories, which I'm like, never once, though, is it the artist Prince.
Not yet.
There's no hiding that fabulousness.
Ruffles. Okay.
I mean, you ever see him in just a undershirt? He's still like, it's hard to hide that kind of Prince.
Hotness. Of course, we talked before about Cowboy Angel and Cowboy versus Angel romances. We do love these in our family.
And really, and part of the reason we realized we like, the silhouette type stories is that they were demi-romantic. The main character takes a long time to really warm up to their interest. And it's understandable and okay in this universe versus so many stories and movies where, by the second time they meet, why aren't they already in bed? And to us, it's like, that's just weird.
To find, if you are looking for tropes, because here's what I'm going to say. If you are interested in exploring writing a romance, I recommend that you already have your tropes picked out you want to tackle before you even outline.
Yes.
And all that you need to Google is romance tropes. In the first page, I found a list of 145 romance tropes. Someone else Book Riot has a list that they are claiming is the complete guide to romance tropes. There's a lot of pages going over popular tropes in romance.
I mean, fake relationship, that's decoy bride. We were talking earlier about David Tennant.
That's the name, Decoy Bride.
Yep.
Yes.
Like, tropes are such a beloved and important part of romance writing. Just in case.
He literally
Mama
just
didn't
brought it
know.
up to my foot. It's like, please?
Are you aware that I am starving here?
He
Sir.
claims that it is time for dinner. I don't know how you're going to get this through.
Sir. You're so cute. He gets groomed tomorrow. So, first time since surgery, he'll finally have a bath. Oh my
Yes.
God.
Oh.
Yes. So, like, I just think, like, it always surprises me when people are like, oh, I want to tackle writing a romance. And I'm like, oh, which tropes are you including? And they look at me and blink. And they're like, what trope? What do you mean? Well, which ones are you doing? Are you doing, friends to enemies, friends or enemies to lovers, or what? You doing fake relationship? There's so many, best friend's lover, best friend's sibling, brother's best friend, celebrity love commoner,
Falling in love with your boss,
clueless love.
Don't forget second chance.
Now, by the way, I want to point out that Megan claims she don't like romances, but the Cyrano / matchmaker is a very beloved trope. So, Megan, I'm calling you on it. I love you, but putting you on blast. So, different worlds, fish out of water, innocent cohabitation. It happened in Vegas. Oh my God. So many people I know personally literally paid off their mortgages with It Happened in Vegas romance novels. Like, around here, you wouldn't believe how many people have actually paid for a house writing like 5 trashy romance novels, and then never wrote again because it's just utilitarian. Yes, you do love it. You love it. If those are what you love, those are your favorite tropes. Love reforms the villain. Mail order bride. I have to admit, even I've written an outline for that one. Mine is what is it? It is a gay for you mail order bride mistaken identity one.
Yeah.
3 tropes of the basic premise. And I love it. So there are lots of tropes there. And, normally when you say there's lots of tropes and everyone loves them and they're very popular, that's like, sounds like these are all mutually exclusive statements, but it's not.
Okay, that's really funny for Megan. Doesn't like contemporary romance, likes contemporary everything else, prefers historical romance. You're not the first person to say that, though,
You're not the
Megan.
first, though. Yeah. It's kind of normal, honestly.
I mean, when we were younger, actually, we specifically looked for historical romance, in part because most historical romance is written by history professors.
Or at least used to be. I don't know about now, but
yeah.
In the 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s, the majority of historical romances being published like by traditional publishers, such as Silhouette and Avon and so on, were written by actual history professors.
In our case, our mother specifically knew the history professors of the local university and what all of their different names were for their pseudonyms.
So, and what I liked about reading historical romances was you got a lot of history in there. So it was a really digestible way to learn about somebody's dissertation. What was the subject of their degree? I read a fantastic historical romance many years ago that was about the first wife of El Cid. And this writer imagined what her life was like. There's differing stories of what happened to his first wife. Either she was killed by invading counter crusaders from Islam, but more commonly it's actually, or supposedly it was believed, that she was kidnapped and taken as a trophy back. So since this writer's actual PhD was about life in pre-Crusades, first Crusades Islam, that's what she wrote about, was like, what would El Cid's first wife's life have been like as somebody who was taken essentially like a POW of the Crusades, and how, she ends up going to university there because women are allowed to go to university in early Islam. And, she ends up actually having like a business and a career. And it's kind of fascinating. And I learned so much by reading this novel. And it, of course, did have some steamy scenes. So, because it's a romance, y'all. And historical romances back then were all bodice rippers. Somebody's bodice got to get ripped. It's more fun when the heroine rips her own bodice.
Mm.
So, but like also there was a lot about Spanish Catholicism during that time period. And I learned so much about Spanish Catholic politics in the First Crusade, or right before the First Crusade or something like that. So anyhow, I did want to touch on how tropes are very important to this genre. And even if you're just wanting to inject a little romance, one of the things that's useful about tropes is if you find a trope, you then have a shorthand to inject it into your story, even though your story is a different genre or a different kind of story. You can inject it where you don't have to spend as much time describing it. So as Tom puts it, you don't have to describe. How was it that you were describing an apple, Tom?
Yeah, you only have to describe the differences. The adjectives you use are only the differences from an apple that is a standard apple. So you work, with, you're assuming your audience has the same assumptions of life as you do. Hence why all historical stories are about contemporary problems, because it's seen through the lens of the contemporary writer and their readership. And it's just you're only talking about what are the differences for you and your readership. Stories are not meant in truth to last forever. You always need to know what the mores, what the assumptions are of the contemporary when it was written. Hence the difficulties in high school of reading those old books from 100 years ago or more. They also then have to teach you, or at least the teachers should be teaching you, what were the situations people were in at that time to help you make sense of it. I mean, Jane Austen stories do not make a lot of sense if you just view it through a modern lens. You're like, but why can't they do this? What about that? Why aren't they doing this? It only works if you know the historical context of what women could and couldn't do in that society at that time, and what the expectations and requirements of society were.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, the tropes are between you and your readers. Of, you've got an apple. So your first assumption is that it's red. It is round. It's solid.
Juicy.
It's juicy. It's edible.
It tastes like an apple.
Yes. So all your adjectives you use to describe it are what makes it different than that kind of apple. Is it tart? Is it hard?
Does it give you immortality?
It could be.
That's
Is
a
it
good one.
shriveled? Does it drip with
wizened?
blood? I'm just throwing that out there.
Was it poisoned by your crazy creepily awesome evil stepmother.
You never know, right? Is it golden? Has it been dropped on a beach somewhere? Mm-hmm. Like, you describe how it's different, not how it already is that. That is the beauty of tropes. Tropes give you shorthand, so you don't have to spend a whole lot of time explaining it to the reader. The reader's already kind of familiar. Like when I say enemies to lovers, we already know approximately where we're expecting the conflicts. They have to hate each other from the start. It's right here. They can't be automatically like lovey-dovey and friendly to each other when they meet if it's enemies to lovers. So
some assassination attempts can go a long way.
Right? That's a really, a knife in the right place, so useful to get the point across, pun intended. So I'm just pointing out, like, there's a reason readers love tropes. And if we're really going to get down to it, there's a science here. And that is dopamine. So we get dopamine. Our brain releases dopamine for us anytime we predicted something and it turned out to be true. So every time we predict it, oh, this is a enemies to lovers. So I know what's going to happen next. And they're going to have to touch. I remember that of like whenever I would read enemies to lovers, there has to be a point where they touch, where they brush hands or they brush a neck, somebody's blowing on somebody's neck, where they get really close and they like it. And then they feel all conflicted inside. And I knew when it's enemies to lovers, this is going to happen because this is how it nearly always happens in this trope. Every time it did happen, my brain would give me dopamine, which just incentivized me to keep reading and keep predicting how the next step in this trope would go. So I had every feel-good reason to want to keep reading it and, quote, not be able to put it down. So when they finally kiss, again, my brain's like, here, have all the dopamines. Dopamines for you, all the dopamines. Because I had predicted this is going to happen, even though, yes, technically the book blurb told me it was going to happen. Still, I get my brain still gives me the dopamine.
But you're still trying to figure. But you're also in your head, predicting essentially for bonus points,
right?
Specifically, how will the scene show up?
Is it that they're going to brush hands? Is it that they're going to accidentally fall on each other into a kiss? That one is nuts. But
no. I love one of them falls, the other catches them in a dance pose, and then like looking at each other of like, we're already in this pose. We could just kiss.
Oh boy, if that is not horny humans right there.
And even though in real life you're like, what is this bullshit? If that ever occurred to you, in the story it's like, go on, do it, kiss, go, yes.
But then you have to have the like pull back and like make them wait for it. It's like
the first time they want to kiss, they can't possibly kiss because this is enemies to lovers, and they have to feel conflicted inside. Like, what is wrong with me?
I feel like with any kind of romance, you can't make it that easy.
No, because there's got to be not yet, and like the reader has to be strung along a little bit. So that when they finally do kiss, it's like, yes, they got it. As if somehow the reader has achieved something when they have only achieved 30 pages. But the brain still doles out the dopamine as well as maybe a little bit of serotonin, a little bit of feel good, because the reader predicted it. That is a lot of the actual science behind why romance stories are the hottest selling, why they support the entire rest of the publishing industry. And more so, they support the majority of the movie industry.
Yeah.
Granted, Marvel and other Disney movies are really making a push for more adventure style than romance. But I want you to think about the fact that Hallmark Movie Channel did not used to exist. It exists because the Hallmark movies were bringing in so much money in reselling licenses on cable channels.
Yeah.
That they made enough, they could make more movies. And they made so many movies, they had enough to run a whole channel where they could make cable companies then pay them because everybody wanted the Hallmark Movie Channel. And then wasn't there like the Christian Movie Channel?
And there's Lifetime.
Yeah, and then Lifetime was like, let's get rid of her silent struggle and let's just do romances now. I mean, they still have the whole...
I love Maggie's just Hallmark movies make the money.
They make so much cash. They're actually apparently in the 20 teens was the number one financial supporter of, what was it, SAG members?
Yeah.
Like the number one major studio paying SAG actors in the 20 teens was movies that eventually ended up on the Hallmark Channel.
I thought Nikki's questions and the stuff in the chat might actually make a good show you about this, about tropes and such.
Mm-hmm.
So she started by just explaining a quick little bit about basis of her story of a British able-bodied guy falling in love with a girl with spina bifida. And she's in a wheelchair, just like she is. And again, that to me though, the first thing is not only write what you know, but also write the world you want, because that helps give other people ideas of how the world could be done better by seeing it in your stories. Never forget the power of your fiction to just give people better ideas of how to approach the world. But she was, wondering of, well, what kind of, tropes was that? And it's like, to be honest, that's not tropes. That's the descriptions, that description didn't actually have any tropes in it. How they meet, how they interact is it. And so, that's where Eva and Nia, started bringing up, the questions of how does the story work? And that's where the tropes come in, is the, the interactions, the method for it. And so then Nikki expanded on, so he's got a restaurant, he's a very sweet guy, and she is too, but independent and doesn't want much help, and he does want to help her, and that sort of annoys her, and they end up falling in love. To which then, Nia gave a very good, succinct romance tropes involved already in this short description of, so there's a meet cute, it's an enemies to friends to lovers, and there's a happily ever after for now. Of like, those are the tropes that are involved.
Right.
Because the tropes are the methods of the narrative. They are the things that happen because they are expected to, and what is kind of needed for this recipe, for these kind of people to change in the ways you need them to for this narrative. What's the conflict that changes them from enemies to friends? Like, once we know that this is going to be this style of story of enemies to friends to lovers, well, now we know we have to have these elements in here. We have to make a recipe for this kind of cake. And that's where the tropes come in of, so we've got the main trope, enemies, friends to lovers. Now, what are the smaller tropes we can use for that? Do they have, what brings them together? Is there a town event? Are they competing on something? What is it that, essentially brings them into conflict and then into resolution? And you can, use all those fun little things of, it's a competition that, the city's doing. Or, the community center is doing a fundraiser. Who knows? But people then are much easier because they're expecting something like that. Tropes are meeting expectations.
I agree. So,
I wonder what the oldest romance trope is.
Well, there's always the Sabine women.
The what?
Really?
I mean,
As I thought those were the dangerous ones.
well, speaking of, segueing into problematic issues and shortcomings of romance genre. So the Sabine women, who was it? Plutarch
Yes.
told that one about, I don't remember all of it because I'm not into, but essentially kidnapping women to take as their bride for reasons that are not, I don't think are really reasons, but and it has it supposedly has a happy ending. So
yeah,
in that they all lived happily ever, like but yeah, it is part of it. Hi, Charlie. How are you doing, darling? They were talking about the Sabine women, the story of the Sabine women, as far as like old romance tropes. It is told by the Romans. Technically, where we get the word romance, I'm throwing that out there. Look, if I had to learn this in 7th grade, you do too. So, remember Mr. Byram? But yeah, this was a trope that was used throughout the Renaissance, through the 1800s. In fact, this trope of kidnapping women, and eventually they don't want to leave, even when their menfolk come to get them back, either through war or through negotiations and bribery. That's a trope, and it is that old that it is Plutarch, who was at least I think one of the first to publish it.
I mean, okay, so if we're gonna get there, let's say the phrase of, and I hope no kids are watching for this one, because this is right there with Greek, mythology, the real Greek mythology. Not as nice. No one gets married. Of probably one of the oldest ones, we see that used to occur, and I believe you brought it up, Gloria, on something previous in the past week.
Fault, Glory. Go on.
But about, or not, no, it wasn't you. Who was it? Someone was bringing it up about, an 80s book on writing romance. Was it? I think maybe it was Maggie. No,
Spence. Spence brought up the only book on writing romance at her library.
Yeah, it was from the 80s.
Published in 1980, and it is like sexual assault as a romantic trope was in there.
And that is actually one of the oldest ones, this belief, and it still shows up in porn. Ugh. Of this, if you sexually assault them afterwards, you've done so well that they will then have affection for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to biblical storytelling.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Of the this very confusion about, again, what is romance, because humans are very confused about what is arousal. And that is why we see so much romance tropes and stuff changing in the last decade, as we're having more of a conversation going, wait a minute, these tropes are not okay, we're going to remove these tropes. We're looking for more functional ones.
Mm-hmm.
As we try to get away from 50 Shades of Grey and this is not BDSM, there is no consent here.
Mm-hmm.
And that just because you've given us consent doesn't mean you cannot rescind it at any later point. BS of no, you already said yes, you're stuck with that. It's like, no.
Yeah,
no, you're not.
I'll tell you the one I heard growing up. You married him, so while you're married, you got to do what he says.
Oh dear.
Oh yeah, that's the one I heard. Like, essentially, you consented to marry him. Now you cannot rescind your consent until you're divorced.
But I mean, we've seen this.
By the way, judges upheld this.
Yeah.
What?
Like, American judges, as recently as the late 90s and early 2000s, upheld this.
Yeah.
So it's something to be aware of, that it is pervasive. you're still going to find it. You're going to still find these very problematic tropes in romance. It doesn't mean it's necessarily okay. But it is a shortcoming of romance that I really feel like pretty much all genres are a reflection of the culture that they are written to serve. It is like, this is the issue. So I would recommend writers, especially if you would like your stories to be popular for more than a few years, avoid the more violent or negative tropes. Yes, I agree with Charlie. There's an issue with translating power play and BDSM into romantic/romance stories. I've seen it done well, but a lot of people don't know what they're doing, and they make a mess of it. So, and they obviously aren't using sensitivity readers.
I'd say oddly, one of the better uses I've ever seen for that, of just, accepting that none of this is right, but it is what it is, was oddly Piers Anthony brought it up in a story of his, sci-fi story called Bio of a Space Tyrant, where the main character has to deal with someone, they love dearly, but they come from a culture where sex is this violent act.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character's like, I'm not comfortable with this at all. I want to keep a relationship with you. I want us to stay together. And so they end up, essentially discussing role play.
Mm-hmm.
And how role play can help deal with, recovering from trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's one of the few times I've ever seen it, brought up and actually played with well, versus, most time it's this 50 Shades,
mm-hmm.
Weird power fantasy strangeness.
I've also, another thing that I find, while we're talking about, we've talked earlier in the previous hour, we talked about the things we love about romance as a genre and our favorite things. So here I'm going to talk about some of the other things that I find problematic about romance. The popularity of pre-Civil War Deep South stories, especially when they are interracial. I'm trying to avoid saying triggering words because I understand not everybody came here to be triggered, and I get it. But they are incredibly problematic. Like, I have so many notes about this, but I am sorry to say, are still actually relatively popular. For instance, I have heard that Amazon has sometimes done a quote crackdown of this, but it is, how do you say, they're doing performative? It is not, they're actually trying to go, no, there's a limit, here's the limit. So the fact that there are plenty of romance writers who do not see using these tropes as a problem. The fact that there are some writers who continue to use human trafficking tropes and they and their colleagues do not see an issue with it.
Real quick, let me just explain what that face I just made. It is not probably what most people are thinking of. It's just, I can hear in my head Gloria's previous complaint when she was working the libraries about why is it that there is a separate one for white women trafficking and everyone else. And that's in, the Library of Congress.
Wow.
The Library of Congress did not get rid of the designation. So they have essentially what we would call tags. The library system has various cataloging, what we would call tags. Everything from like romance to haunted house would be another one, right? But they also have a lot of highly inappropriate designations in the Library of Congress. And they only got rid of the term, and I'm sorry to say this, please be warned, it is an Asian hate phrase, yellow peril. So yellow refers to skin tone, and it was the idea of Asians, particularly people of Chinese descent or nationality, infiltrating governments, towns, society, whatever, and having their own agenda, or spy, espionage, so on, and it was called yellow peril. And the Library of Congress used this as a cataloging term, like as a term to classify books, fiction books, as well as nonfiction books that dealt with this subject. So think of like the Charlie Chan mysteries, and they only got rid of it in the 80s. But the term white slavery is, I believe, still being used by the Library of Congress, and it has been contested several times, and they continue to keep it unless they maybe got rid of it in the last 3 or 4 years. Like the last time I checked in 2015, they're still using it. So, and this is true, the Library of Congress has a secret meeting of 19 or 20 librarians that no one is supposed to know the identity of, and they get together like every year or two, and they determine new classifications as well as which classifications to get rid of. Like when we talk about secret cabals, librarians have it.
Yes.
So nobody knows who to talk to about it because it's secret and their identities are secret. And some people have even said that the librarians don't even know each other because they're like in dark rooms or something. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
That it's all talk from our shadowed chairs.
Like in the Marvel, with Robert Redford. What was that one? Wasn't that one of the Avengers movies?
Well, was that Civil War?
Yeah, I think. Was it?
Or was that the one before Civil War? Or was that Winter Soldier? I think it might have been Winter Soldier.
It might have been Winter Soldier. Like that there are librarians having secret meetings where they don't even know who each other are because their identity is obscured. About what classifications? Are you kidding me? Yes, red peril. It's all crap. It's all terrible.
And then, as Charlie points out,
that was the original horror of zombie fiction, that slaves would control their white masters through magic. So many things come from this white fragility. Amen. Amen, man. Yeah. They wear robes of blue and walk in a circle around the flame, each with a piece of paper with the chosen trope. I mean, I may have been writing some fiction on this that I was writing before I became a librarian and found out that this was more true than I actually realized.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So some of the existence of these tropes will persist because there's only a few libraries that as large as the Library of Congress. There's like literally, I think, 3. Might just be 2 now. I've heard some rumblings going on because, the world is in upheaval. But there's a few libraries in the world, and they essentially set the precedents for all these tropes. All these tropes are classified in the Library of Congress. All the tropes that persist, that remain, that continue to be used again and again, the Library of Congress uses it as a classification. So even when we don't like sexual assault as a trope, the Library of Congress is still using it under romance novels.
I would say,
so it will persist.
I'd say to me, like these 2 ones really sum it up, which is
abduction and abuse tropes. Yes, I think they're just absolutely crappy.
And essentially, you have to have consent for there to be romance.
Right.
If there is not consent, there is not romance. If someone is under the power of another person, there cannot be consent.
I agree.
That is why, to me, whenever people talked about the slippery slope, quote unquote, about gay marriage rights, it's no. We're still talking about consenting adults.
Mm-hmm.
It's, there's not a slippery slope to people being able to marry their pets. because pets cannot give consent. You know, that is the difference of it, is that it has to be among peers. If there is not a sense of peerage, then that is not, a good trope, a good genre. Maggie was also bringing up,
Yes, werewolf abusive alpha would be different from Omegaverse.
I mean, let alone just how much they hold on to this whole alpha male thing that literally only lasted a year before the person who wrote it rescinded it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it literally was just 1 year before, it was rewritten and gone, nope, that was bad data. We did this study incorrect. And yet people hold on to it so hard because it goes with what they want the world to be. Which is, hence that thing about write the world better. Do not write the world worse. Write better. What is a better way to encounter this?
You can still write every kind of story you want to tell, and you can write it in a world that is better, at least in one way, than the world we live in.
Like, one of the things I would really look forward to Nikki's romance story is seeing better interactions of how someone, what are better ways to interact with someone with spina bifida in a wheelchair? What are better ways to phrase, offers of assistance? What are better ways, to be a partner to them instead of, acting and infantilizing someone in a wheelchair? Like, that's what I would like to see in that kind of story.
How do you flirt? What is a recommended way to flirt with someone with spina bifida in a wheelchair? I'm not saying I need to know, but I'm saying maybe I would be interested to know.
Like to have that in my back pocket?
You never know what life will bring. So that is the problematic, or among the problematic issues with the romance genre, with the tropes within romance. There is a dark side to the tropes. For the most part, you will know when you encounter it. I would honestly recommend treading carefully, using sensitivity readers, because I don't know anybody here or anybody ever watching this who would want to be perpetuating negative stereotypes or, abusive thought processes. I don't know anybody who'd want that. So
exactly, Nikki.
To be aware of. Yeah. It's something to be aware of. And it's something to understand of, welcome to, you're now part of the resistance. So that you know what you're looking at when other people are like talking about this, you have some of the talking points to make about, but what about consent? Yeah, like, I just want to, by the way, because we're on this little area, and I just want to point out, also, sometime look up Stockholm Syndrome and see that, again, that was a negative narrative and not actually based in science.
I was going to say, they literally have never found a single reported honest case of Stockholm Syndrome. They've only ever found it as reported by reporters and journalists using it, not by any psychologist or psychiatrist in a professional field with actual, diagnostic capacity. It is purely made up fiction to help explain away things people didn't like what happens if someone is treated better by the enemy. How do you still villainize the enemy? Oh, well, their mind's been broken. That's why they don't want to leave.
It's a way to discredit the victim.
Yeah.
Which, again,
or
is a negative trope.
Or that movie I hate, but every Hollywood director must reference at some point in their career.
Hi, have you watched The Searchers yet? I had to be tortured, so I tortured Tom with it. Literally. I had to watch it.
Familial love. I can't speak English.
I told him. I warned him ahead of time, like, this is a terrible movie, but I had to watch it, so now you have to watch it so you understand what I'm talking about when I complain about this movie. And he was like, fine. I pulled in a favor for this one, but then I made him watch it, yeah. And there it is referenced. Almost every single director in Hollywood references some part of the
Yes.
Searchers.
But one of the key points of the Searchers that they don't really bring up a lot is that so they're searching for, you know, this woman. What was it? A daughter and slash wife? Something that
No,
was.
it's a daughter. Well, Natalie, what's her name? Who died?
Portman? Wait, no, sorry.
No, Wood.
Wrong Natalie, but remember she was she used to run around with James Dean, Natalie something.
Yeah, I can't remember her name
She was
offhand.
in what is it, the 42nd Street Miracle or Miracle on 42nd
Yeah.
Street? You know what I'm talking about? That
Yeah.
movie? Natalie Wood. Thank you, Nia. I can see it on my TV, the chat, even though it hasn't showed up.
Okay, I literally said that, and you just you talked over me.
I'm sorry, Tom. I love you still. But yeah, Natalie Wood is in it, and I think she plays the daughter. She plays a 13-year-old girl who is kidnapped by, I want to say, Comanche, some Comanches who are actually retaliating against an attack on Comanches, which is actually based on a historical reference that this happened, wherein they did eventually find the child, like years later, like 3 or 5 years later, and she refused to leave the Comanches because she had been raised as their own, and so her family kidnapped her back, and then she escaped and moved back, and then that time she married somebody in the tribe so that they couldn't make her leave again. And she lived the rest of her days with them.
But Stockholm syndrome essentially was created.
But it wasn't because of Stockholm syndrome, because she was interviewed many times, and she's like, I am treated with respect here. I am allowed to own property among the tribal members. I have a say in what we do as a tribe. I have been taken in as their own, and I've been treated better than I would ever be treated. Even when I was taken back by my family, I was treated with so much disrespect. I was abused. I was hit every day. I don't want to live with those people. Those people I, disowned as my family. I knew as my family. It wasn't Stockholm syndrome. She was with the Comanches because they treated her with respect and love, and she felt valued, like all of us would. But that is not the story that they told in The Searchers. Oh, yes. Again, may I point out white fragility? It is amazing. John Wayne is in it, if that helps anybody. I don't know.
I know him.
Yep.
We have an airport named after him back home.
Tom Ford is the director. It's something Ford, Glenn Ford. I don't know.
That was Tom Ford.
Okay. So, like the cantina scene from Star Wars is a reference to The Searchers. Anytime you see people like just walking and the weather changes, that is probably a reference to The Searchers, because this happens for like 20 minutes in the movie, in the middle of the movie. Oh, let me tell you how it drags. It is an editing nightmare. But the cantina scene, let me tell you, George Lucas literally just took it and put aliens instead of humans in the cantina. That is the only change he did. Otherwise, I think the music is actually the same. It is very odd. Like, it's supposed to be a Mexican cantina, only it's now a Mexican cantina with like a blue elephant playing its nose. What's happening? I don't know what that is.
That's in the Jabba the Hutt sequence.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, let's see. What did Maggie say? Many tribes treated their women and female children better, and often captives would earn their way to become tribal. Yes, exactly. And this was actually a serious problem in the, quote, Wild West, where women and children were leaving white people's society wholeheartedly and joining local tribes because they were treated with respect. They were valued. Often they would find communities that loved them, and they refused to go back.
And if anyone, is going, but that doesn't seem like anything we have now for tropes. Like, this is the whole point of the Great Resignation as it's going on, is that why are people leaving minimum wage jobs? And it's because they're not treated with any respect. And if anything, 2020 showed how much they really are not respected and are just expected to die for profits.
Mm-hmm.
of,
So,
it's the same situation.
well,
And
yes,
guess
but it's still current.
It's cheaper to have people burn out and replace them than actually
except when you
hire.
can't, except when you don't have any more people.
Exactly.
Like when I was working at Cellular One, which was my first experience with corporate America treating me as a worker so poorly. I was hired when I was 18, and they hired me so young on purpose. The term we used to use back in the late 90s was they treat people like tissues and throw them away. And that was literally their hiring practice at the local Cellular One I worked at. So,
And by the way, in case you're wondering, of the contemporaries.
let's see. My grandfather hated the movie, was friends with John because Uncle Ray sold horses, John Wayne and Ronald Reagan. I mean, I hate the movie too. But yeah, I was like, it is referenced in almost like every director has referenced The Searchers at least once in their directing career. It is amazing how I think it is the top referenced movie in American cinema. And I do not even consider it mildly good, let alone one of the best. Like, why would you reference this crappy movie? But okay. Yeah. The costumes aren't even that good, in my opinion. I know. Like, sometimes it's like, at least let me look at now, I will tell you, okay, here's the one thing that I like about The Searchers. I do have one nice thing to say about Searchers. Okay. They filmed it, a lot of it they filmed, especially the scenes where they're not speaking, where they're just traveling around searching. They filmed it at Zion National Park, and it is a beautiful, just the landscapes are gorgeous. They filmed it over, I think, 3 seasons. It's amazing landscapes. It's big sky country. They actually had camera equipment they hauled out to do this, and they really did capture the beauty of parts of the American West. And it was the first time I ever thought about traveling to the Western National Parks and thought, oh, there'd be something for me to see that I would really love to experience it once. So I will give that The Searchers, visually, particularly in the middle part of the movie when they are searching, is a beautiful brochure, if you will, of the American West and what panorama vistas you're capable of in the American West. It is absolutely gorgeous. Because they filmed primarily on various locations. Even though they had, it was a great expense to haul this enormous equipment out there to film large format photography and cinemascope. It was incredibly expensive. And it was difficult because of the whole issue with sand and wind and humidity changes throughout the day. But what they got was still amazing and gorgeous. So visually, it is a beautiful movie, particularly for the times that it was filmed in.
Just put it on mute.
That's what I would recommend. Put the whole thing on mute, vacuum, maybe write. Every time you look up, it'll be beautiful. You do not need to listen to the crap they spew. That's what I would recommend.
So to continue on the tangent, there's a movie called Aguirre, The Wrath of God by Werner Herzog. They filmed it in the Amazonian jungle. Like, they actually went on location and hired a bunch of locals to help them move all their stuff around. But, oh my gosh. The opening shot is them climbing up a mountain, and it's a super far away. Like, the camera is there, and it sits there for 15 minutes while you watch these little ants of people climb up this mountain.
I think I saw part of that, and Tom was like, what are you watching?
It's like, are we seriously watching this in my film class? Like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Can we not watch Nosferatu instead? Please?
Yeah, and like, isn't that the one where Werner doesn't talk for a few, like, there's a few minutes of the opening movie where nobody's saying anything, and then all of a sudden he's talking, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I feel like it's way more menacing once he starts talking. This is great.
Yeah.
And Tom was like, really, Glory?
Gosh.
Yes. So, all right. enough of the unpleasantness.
It's time for a break.
We're going to go to break. And when we come back, we're going to brainstorm possible solutions, all sorts of ideas. It's your final time to get questions in if you have any questions, or to get your final thoughts in as we wrap it up. It's going to be grand because we still, despite all of this and the searchers, love romance. And we love what romance can be. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to break. May I highly recommend maybe a little walk around, maybe a snack. How is your drinkage situation? Just go check it. You know, I'm throwing that out there.
Time to feed the puppy.
It's time to feed the puppy. Long after he's given up hope. You can tell the resignation in his silence. And you're like, I'm aware and I'm holding it. I'm not even going to do it. He's like, she's just spiteful.
Stealing my hopes and dreams.
Yes. So we're going to go to break. We're going to watch Laura's 10-minute candle timer.
Oh.
Have a little zen. And when we come back, we're going to discuss all the solutions, all the ideas to really make amazing romance in our stories. So we'll see y'all in a few minutes. Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep, beep. Beep, 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 beep. Snuff. Hi, Chandra.
Charlie posted some good news.
Woo! All 12 chapters of Raid, Book 0, in the Shadow Phoenix saga have been submitted to Vella and are now in review. OMG, this book will be out soon. Yay!
Someone was fed and is now destroying a paper bag.
There we go. It's got priorities.
Yes.
Woo!
All right, we all made it back.
Yay! How'd everybody do? Roy got fed.
And I fed myself.
Congratulations! I'm proud of
Dang
you.
quesadilla.
Nice.
Delicious quesadillas.
I only
Okay.
say it that way when I'm quoting Napoleon Dynamite.
I know. Oh, Maggie vacuumed already. That's amazing.
Woohoo!
Yay!
And I got a shot on the farm, so hooray!
Yay! Yeah, I was thinking about asking, like, how did?
You had my flip flop. No.
Oh no! Be careful. He may develop a taste. Yeah, I did things, and I went over to see Tom, and I thought Instagram was back up and running, because supposedly the Instagram post I had tried to post over an hour ago finally went through.
Well, it showed me, but it also said it couldn't load the picture, so not really.
Yeah,
It's a
so
toad.
I don't know how up and running Instagram is, so
Just watching everyone's withdrawal.
they're all fiending, man. They got them urges.
Where's my stories?
They're in the books that are on your shelf that you haven't read yet.
Yeah, your Tom, your link finally went through.
Yeah, how do you come from for every writer? So tell me about your TBR.
How dare you attack me like this?
And how many floor to ceiling heights is it?
Yeah, it won't show me the picture I just posted either.
Yeah.
So I don't know how great Instagram is doing. Also, it keeps giving me network fail notices in between. So best of luck to everybody. I hope you could distract yourself from your cravings by hanging out with us. Yes.
So since we're now working on solutions, making things better, I thought oddly, let's talk about Nikki's other story, which is a little problematic.
Okay.
Yes.
And
I'm writing another story where the guy kidnaps a girl to save her life from an abusive boyfriend.
I mean, this kind of reminds me of, back in the day, Glory talking to her mother about the Mann Act and what happens when you cross state lines with someone.
I don't remember what happened to start this, but our younger sister moved in with her then boyfriend. Something happened where my mother was upset.
And yeah, it wasn't anything like he was actually doing abusive. It's more of she was showing signs of distress in herself, and like it was getting a bit worrisome the way she was sounding on the phone.
Our sister.
Yeah.
But she wouldn't come home. Like, so our sister at the time was living in Florida and wouldn't come home to Mississippi. So mom showed up at my house one day, agitated, and saying that she was going to drive to Florida and like duct tape our sister and shove her into the car and bring her home. And I had to point out, the Mann Act directly addresses this, as well as our sister is now of age. And you cannot take her across state lines against her will. We had a whole discussion about somehow, like, there's been more federal legislation, so the Mann Act is no longer actually the act that, it's just now you just can't kidnap anybody, but it used to be it only applied to women. Anyway, that's a whole nother lack of feminism issue to discuss another time. But I was like, she's of age. You can't take her against her will. That is still kidnapping. I don't care if you're her mother. The courts do not view it that way. Kidnapping is still kidnapping any which way you slice it. So you have to get her consent if you are going to load her into a car. And quite frankly, if she does give consent, I would stay away from the duct tape. Because she's going to rescind that consent immediately, was what I told Mom. I was like, also, even crossing state lines with an intent to force somebody into a vehicle, let alone that you plan to then recross state lines, can be viewed as a federal crime. As a felony. So, no. Eventually, I talked Mom down off of the roof, essentially. And she did not decide to go to Florida after all. For at least a couple weeks till she calmed down. Meanwhile, I did also call my sister to warn her, look, you need to address your mental health because Mom is losing her mind and is like debating committing felonies to get you help, which is, again, I pointed out not helpful. She's like, why would she do that? And I'm like, okay, again, I'm trying to warn you. Please go see someone. You need to deal with your stress. It's very distressing to our mother. And I really don't want her to commit crimes, but I have every belief your boyfriend will press charges against our mother. I don't need this. And so instead, our sister made arrangements with our mother for our mother to visit for a week, in a week or two, once our mother and sister calmed down. Things got better. But again, I want to point out the whole two wrongs don't make a right. So kidnapping somebody is not going to make it better. Consent is important. People do not appreciate anybody trying to save them when they didn't ask to be saved. Offering somebody a way out and they take you up on the offer, on the other hand, totally fine, totally great.
I mean, you can still do the fun, in the moment adventure part of the, someone says, I'm here for you if you ever need a way out. Just give me a call and I'll show up day or night.
Right.
I understand if it's in the middle of the night. And have them call up like, I need you to get me now. I've got 20 minutes while they're gone. You have to show up here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can still have the action moments and, the adrenaline of you need to show up immediately. This is a fast action sequence.
Mm-hmm.
But again, yeah, you do have to be careful about this whole consent thing and this whole trying to normalize taking away other people's consent. Again, that is a form of infantilizing.
Mm-hmm.
It is doing the abuser's behavior.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out from. I have not heard much about this.
The mandatory couples diversity being put into every form of romance media for TV. to movies to books, and the expectation that
Romance,
romance
authors.
must write all of them.
Yeah, people of different backgrounds must be getting together now.
I just see it more as a reflection of my real life because I love Mississippi, and there's that whole idea that Mississippi is segregated is a bit of a falsehood.
Yeah, Fox and the Hound was written about Mississippi.
But I mean, like, to me, I'm just used to seeing all sorts of diverse combinations of couples, and at this point, it really gets I don't know everybody's background anymore because it's not obvious. You know, there's so much intermixing. A lot of lovely babies. You know,
My nephew is gorgeous.
ah, I love
My
fat
sister's
babies.
husband is from Hong Kong.
Mm.
So he has his eyes and hair and my sister's nose and mouth. Like, he's so stinking cute.
I love it when they have the super fat cheeks and the super
Yes.
fat little legs. Yes, like
Oh, Gloria has a weakness for Korean babies in that first 6 months. Like, just bundle them up. Show me that chubbiness.
Yep. Show me them chubby little legs. Oh yeah.
The girl is due next month.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, if you need like a preview and just enjoy the look, like, go look up on YouTube Kimono Mom. We watch this a lot because, I mean, Kimono Mom is very cute. I mean, she does her makeup well. She's a very attractive woman, no question.
Lady, yes.
But her kid, her little baby, who is now just over 2 years old, that kid can mug for the camera like few others. Like every single episode, it is just the cutest faces.
Yes,
and she has her own little high chair stool that she stands in
to assist
while Mom makes the food.
Yes. Oh, it's fantastic, y'all. Highly recommend.
And she knows what she's doing. Daddy has taught her well of how to make these faces. Cannot recommend it enough for just the adorableness.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yes. I like fat little cute babies, period. Like all fat cute babies in the world. Please give me all the fat cute babies. Yes. Fat little cheeks. Oh my god. I love when the cheeks are fat. So let's see. Maggie says, I do too, but I have encountered so many things on TV and movies and in books in the last year where the gay couples and interracial couples are so over stereotyped. I find it disturbing because it is obvious the writers know no one like the characters they are writing.
So that actually gets more into something you've seen a lot more complaints in the past decade about, which is this Hollywood social signaling in a false way of like why I had so many problems with the Ghostbusters movie that came out with Kristen Wiig et al. I love all those actresses.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy most of their comedies, and their acting is quite good. But the way Paul Feig wrote that movie, it was a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought people, but everyone will go see it because it's all women and women power. Yay. It's like, that's not real women power. That's just social signaling, trying to get money for this instead of what's real, female empowerment. And whenever I hear people talk about, people don't want it, but men don't want to go see women, strong women. It's like, all right, let me go over all of the horror and thriller movies in the late 70s and 80s with really strong female characters.
Alien?
Yes, what? Alien. Everyone loves Ripley.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is still upset to this day in the sequel, Aliens, that the Spanish actress, I can't remember her or the character's name offhand, did not get more screen time because she was just awesome.
Halloween.
Yeah, we love Jamie Lee Curtis. These were actually empowered women who were doing things for themselves, who were, characters we all liked, who, had agency. the way they wrote these characters, like in Ghostbusters, they didn't have agency. They just stumbled in. They had to do this. They didn't want to do this. They never really enjoyed it, you know.
And
that's
they weren't running from a T-Rex in heels.
Exactly. Versus Gloria and I last night were watching the trailer for the new Ghostbusters movie that
Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd, that Ramos's kid, I believe, wrote. Jason who was it?
Reitman?
Reitman. Wrote and directed. Of the sort of main character, it looks like, is a teenage girl who is definitely not officially, but definitely somewhere on neurodivergent. And I haven't heard anyone complaining about this, of her and her brother being the main team and all. It's like, no, this is interesting. All these characters have agency. This looks fun. But it's the same thing with these couples that are different backgrounds, different racial, of if it's not genuine, if it's not by their choice and agency, it's just for social signaling kudos, the audience will turn on you pretty fast, because it just rings false. Why would they want to be together if they're from such different backgrounds? What's their interest in the other person? And if you can't give a good reason, and there are plenty of people I've seen from very different backgrounds who got together and have very happy marriages. But I think that's the kind of the problem Maggie's noticing, is that it rings false.
So Maggie also said, just because there's a gay couple does not mean one will be catty or effeminate. Not every gay couple is the couple from the Birdcage. I would like to point out, Matt Baum just came out with a new video. There is the link. Like literally yesterday. And I love it. And it is about the gay couple, as well as other characters in the Barney Miller show. And literally this is addressed specifically about the gay character that was initially introduced in the first season being this sort of effeminate stereotype, and the evolution of this character as well as his partner later in the series. And it's a very excellent video essay. Of course, I adore Matt Baum. So just throwing that out there, something to watch this week, man. I highly recommend. But again, there's nothing wrong with writing diverse characters, including diverse couples. It's if there's insincerity, that will show pretty quickly.
And I like Eva's point of her middle grade has a lesbian couple. It never says it, but it implies it, and she never clarifies anyone's sexuality. But I mean, that's exactly what you'd expect for a middle grade. They're not really sure. They just know who it is they like particularly, and that's fine. It doesn't, versus it doesn't. So it doesn't seem forced. Oh, I am this, so I must be this way. It's like, no. People are still finding themselves.
Again, not to talk about our little sister all the time, but our little sister in kindergarten, she made her best friend, and he had 2 mommies who were together, as well as a daddy who was divorced from one of his mommies, but not the other. And this seemed absolutely fine and normal to them. Laylee, our little sister, was best friends with this little boy their whole school career. And it never seemed out of place to any of the other kids in their class either. It's just how it is. But again, they also didn't talk about it, other than, if I recall, anytime you were going to go over to his house and it was your first time, if you were a classmate, you were going over, he would take you aside and go, just so you know, I have 2 mommies. And sometimes other kids would go, yeah, I do too. I have my mom and my stepmom. And he's like, no, I have 2 mommies. I don't have a stepmom. And eventually he did get a stepmom because his father eventually. And then he was like, I have 2 mommies and I have 1 stepmom. And they're like, okay.
So who do you ask for
And he
a
was like,
treat?
you just need to know.
Who do I ask for a cookie?
Right? And he would say, like, okay, hit this mom up. She usually gives out cookies faster than the other mom. And children. So that, like, we lived in a small, rural-ish, southern, relatively conservative town. None of the kids ever thought anything of it. In fact, they tended to love, I think it was Willie, wasn't that his name? Williams?
I want to say
Williams
yeah.
two moms. Yeah. Williams two mommies, because they tended to bring the better snacks when it was their turn to bring snacks to the class. Like I had said once for kindergarten, because they were like, what should we bring? We want to make a good impression as, the resident lesbians. And I was like, you can never go wrong with cupcakes, and then walked on by to my room. And so from then on, they would always make cupcakes and stuff. I'm like, unfortunately, that the kids started associating lesbians with cupcakes. So when they were in upper elementary school and they had their first visit from, what was it used to be called, the Gay Straight Alliance or something? And one of them was a teenager from the high school, so it's a bunch of teenagers from the Gay Straight Alliance came over, and the kids asked are any of you lesbians? And one of them was like, I think I might be, one of the teenagers. And they were like, do you have cupcakes? It was like the reason they asked was they were trying to shake down her for cupcakes.
It was a very confused event.
Yes. I heard about it later at the University Gay Straight Alliance meeting that evening.
I mean, I did manage to get Laylee once to bring home one of these cupcakes, because she talked about how much she enjoyed it whenever they did, and I did manage to try one. I'm like, no, they did make really good cupcakes. Like, they knew how to make sure it stayed moist. The frosting was actually tasty.
And they would do some with pudding in the middle, with the fudgy middles.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but that's that is not the worst association of lesbians equal cupcakes. There's worse associations in this world. I think that's totally fine, So, but yeah, they never made a big deal. It's just William has two mommies, and eventually William has two mommies and one stepmom, and a daddy.
I feel though what we're really getting at for how to tell if the tropes you're using are good tropes is there consent in there? Does everyone always keep their consent? But also, does everyone keep their agency? Because readers are most interested in the active main character. I was just watching a video of a fan editor talking about their problem with the Hobbit trilogy. Thank you. And how they re-edited The Hobbit into a single movie, because it's called The Hobbit. The book is called The Hobbit. The last movie, The Hobbit, is almost entirely written out of. That's a problem, because we enjoy these stories for agency, for action, for the choices our characters make, whether they're good choices or bad choices that cause even more problems. Never forget, when in doubt, just give your main character another problem if you need to extend the story a little bit. You can always add in an additional problem. It's life.
I think one of the other concerns that sometimes happen with writing diverse characters is whitewashing a character, even though say they're a person of color, but specifically maybe Hispanic, and they're identified as Hispanic early in the story, and then there's nothing else at all that would point to their background for their character. And I think maybe that is what some of the concern is about these diversity for the sake of diversity characters.
Versus I like Doom Patrol, that does and not in a heavy-handed, just in a as it comes up. Does bring up the background of one of the characters, Jane, who comes from a very, very conservative Mexican-American background.
Mm-hmm.
And so most time you would never think twice about it, but when it shows up, yes, she's using the phrasing, talking about family that is in that group, and everything else. And it's those little parts that help keep the character true to them versus no, you never hear a second thing about their background. It's like, well, why'd you even do that? How are they not?
Why'd you give them a background that's different from your own as the writer? If you're, never going to acknowledge his existence again.
Versus like, I loved Chandra talking about her family background. And to me, one of the ways it truly shows her family background is her love of curries and all the curries she had growing up. Of like, go on, I'm here for that. Of the, yes, she has, Indian family. And, from that, yes, there's a lot of Indian foods. And so she grew up just thinking, doesn't everyone have curries? No, that part you were blessed.
Yeah, he didn't all end up so lucky. Yes. Hi, Carrie.
Hi. I wanted to join in sooner, but we had daycare today, and then we had dinner, and Anna had a monster tantrum, and then she fell asleep, and now it's bath time.
I'm glad y'all all survived.
Roy has a squeaky toy.
Touch and go there for me.
Well, I mean, Roy is, not that far off developmentally from Anna as far as age and toddlerhood.
Yeah, except Roy, when he gets mad, he doesn't claw at your face.
So far?
I mean, he still goes for those toes.
He eats my hair!
Yo!
He'll climb up the back of the couch and start gnawing on my hair. I don't know why.
I did not see that coming. Toddlers, what are you going to do?
Yeah, she's in that fun, I must hurt when I'm mad phase, because, toddlers and sorting out their emotions.
Terrible twos be terrible.
I mean, everyone should at some point watch that episode from the TV series Dinosaurs.
Yes.
About the terrible twos. It was so accurate.
I love that show.
I don't remember that episode.
They're celebrating baby's second birthday. And they're reminiscing about the previous two kids. You remember they were like teenagers. Their previous two kids' birthdays, their second birthdays, what was it like? What were their terrible twos like? And they're like, I don't know. I remember lighting Charlene's second birthday candle, and then all of a sudden I was lighting her third birthday candle. And that was it. Their memory just glossed over the whole year for each kid.
And the baby turns 2 and essentially turns into
Demon Baby?
From was it Poltergeist? No, not Poltergeist, the other one. No, what's the pea soup one?
Oh, Exorcist.
Turns into Exorcist Baby.
Yes.
And they realize the cure is the kid just needs to turn 3 years old, so they just have a third birthday party the next day.
It's fantastic. It's a really fun episode. Highly recommend. If only that worked.
If only that worked.
If only that worked. Yeah. So, I think the baby ends up levitating at one point. It's fantastic. I highly recommend this episode.
Yeah. Well, now she's fine. She's playing in the bath.
Good.
Every kid should have time to just play in the bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish Fisher-Price still made my favorite bathtub toy.
Oh, yeah. I can't believe they discontinued it. It was the best toy ever.
But it was this weird little panel of a lot of little things in this, housed in plastic for you to do with water. So, there was a little pump thing that would squirt water out of the top of a little whale.
It would stick. It would suction to the side of the bathtub. And yeah, you had a little cup. You could put water in and put it into the whale, and then you pump it,
and it would go down a little chute.
Yeah, and then there was
There's
another like little
things.
windmill or like little like I don't know what it's called, but like a water wheel. Yeah, I think it's a water wheel. And there were just all these little toys, but like it was a big solid thing, so you didn't lose any parts, and it was like incredibly durable. The one we had lasted through all of our childhoods. It lasted through
all of our childhoods.
We were secretly, maybe some of us were still putting it on in our bathtub in middle school because it was fun.
One of her bath toys is one of Joe's Lego boats.
Mm. Nice.
It doesn't float very well. It fills up with water very quick, and then you've got the Titanic.
I would get that vibe. Yeah, Lego doesn't seem like a sealed situation.
No iceberg necessary.
Right. Just water. So, but yeah, romance, huh? You got any thoughts, Carrie?
I don't read enough of it. I don't even read enough, period. But, gosh. People need to learn the difference between romance and erotica.
Yes, lust is not the same.
Harlequin romance books definitely ride that line really hard. My grandmother loved reading Harlequin. She had a subscription.
Mm-hmm.
She'd get like 3-4 books a month, and she'd plow through them. Yep. One day she saw me reading a Nora Roberts book. Nora Roberts is fantastic. She's the queen of the romance genre for a reason. And so she gave me one of her Harlequin books that she thought I would like. And I had to set it down. It was literally man meets woman. They're up against the wall. And then maybe some plot. And they're on the floor. And it's like, no.
Yikes. When I was in middle school reading Harlequin, I was reading the basic Harlequins that were the the book ended with the first kiss. I can kind of remember the cover, but yeah, it was just your basic, Harlequin. It wasn't any of the imprints or the offshoots. And that was the only reason why my mother allowed me to keep reading them, was because every one of the books ends at the first kiss. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, yeah, we're pretty tame. They were quite salacious to me when I was 11.
And I kind of remember like questioning if some of these interactions were consensual. Like, really? Like, can we not?
Mm-hmm. Tom would just like everyone to see his favorite bathtub toy of all time.
Very nice.
Just so you know.
Is that an octopus or a ghost?
Yes. It is an octopus.
Okay.
Since it's supposed to be water themed. You could call it a ghost. I don't care. I'm not coming for you.
The octopus would come for me.
But
it would look across the land and find me.
I think if you get enough, you get the green thing moving enough, the octopus pops out. It's like a pop out, like a Jack in the Box.
Oh.
So you put the water in the top right-hand side. It runs through. You also can pump it, and it'll come out, and the whale then starts moving that water wheel. There's a lot going on. Highly recommend.
But yeah, it was like, but there's something like you can actually play with, and there's multiple things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did appreciate our parents always had stuff for us to play with in the bathtub instead of just say, no, you have to stay there for 10 minutes.
My sister sent me a picture of my nephew once. there was no water surface visible. It was solid toys. It was like a laundry basket and water bottles and toys. It was like, oh my gosh.
My mom made a doll cake for Anna's birthday and just stuck a Barbie doll in it.
Yep.
So she plays with that.
Yep. How you do it, just make it work. So, romance. Where are we? Is it final thoughts time?
It might be. Well, actually, really, like, what is it that brings you back to romance?
Happy endings.
For me, it's that feeling. It's like,
Yep.
It's fantasy. Look, the idea that
each other better.
Yeah, the romance that it is like, oh, it's contemporary. No, they're all fantasy. And it's a nice fantasy. It's a believable fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be able to happen to me, but it can happen to someone I know.
Mm-hmm.
Since I grew up so neurodivergent, for me it was always this is how conversations are supposed to go. This is how they can work out. And I was just fascinated with, like, oh, is that what it's like when you say the right thing?
And when the writer's able to pull off like a connection between the two characters, it doesn't have to be like, I've been watching a lot of Hotel Transylvania, so it doesn't have to be the love at first sight zing.
Mm-hmm.
It can, like, some of the going back to Nora Roberts, my favorite trilogy that I've read of hers, it's called the Circle Trilogy, and there's 3 couples that develop throughout the series, and each book focuses on one of the couples, but all of the relationship building starts in book 1, and you get to see them all coming together as starting off as strangers and being thrust into the situation, and they grow and see how much they like connect with each other as a group and then as a couple. And the second one, like I said, is my favorite because the one character, Blair, minor spoilers, but she had her heart broken. So when she meets Larkin, and he's charming and flirty and really cute, and she's like, I want to warm up to you, but you're just going to stomp on my heart like the last guy did. And so watching him help her break down those barriers, and I'm just like,
like, this is what good relationships can be like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as Eva, points out so well, a guidebook to masking, you say? Another point towards why what we write matters.
Right. So,
these are the relationships we're looking for. These are what we want relationships to be.
When I was working as a public librarian, the most popular romance novel series at the time, like, our patrons were obsessed with this series. We could not keep it in. We could not keep it in stock. We couldn't get enough copies or enough of it. Oh my God. And it's the Love Finds You In series. So the idea is there is one, I know that they made a movie off of at least one of them, Love Finds You in Sugar Creek, Ohio. Every title is a location. I don't know if these are all real locations, because some of them sound made up, but then again, I say that, and Mississippi has Hot Coffee, Mississippi, a real location.
Wow.
That's a real place. It also has Why Not Mississippi, spelled WHYNOT. Why Not Mississippi? And it is, again, a real location. So,
and this is where Blueberry Hill is. For those who like the song.
Blueberry Hill is a real place. Or it was. I mean, I don't know if there's blueberries still there, but maybe. But it's Love Finds You in every location in America. But like every state, like their publishing goal, back when they started this, was to have a Love Finds You in every state in America. And these were more of your inspirational romance style. If I understood correctly, because I never really read them at the time, that wasn't what I was into. But they're not all that Amish romance stuff, which I find odd. Not that I'm judging anybody who likes to read it. It's just like, sometimes I wonder, do the Amish know they've been fetishized? But okay.
Sugar Creek is a real place.
Okay.
It's only an hour and a half from me.
I'm going to need pictures at some point when you get in your car.
It's also known as the Little Switzerland of Ohio.
I'm going to need pictures, and I need you to directly send them to me so I can vicariously live through your adventure.
But yeah, I had heard I've heard the name, and I went and Googled it. So,
yeah. So, but yeah, they're all romances. They're inspirational romances. So they're more like, sort of like the Harlequins in that some of the books, I think the books all have kissing or at least hand holding. I've been assured by patrons they have hand holding. Our readers could not get enough of this series. They're like, every story is sweet. Every story is warm and compassionate and kind. And I love it, because sometimes somebody's a stranger coming through and the car breaks down. Who doesn't love that trope? And I haven't missed Facebook. I'm just saying. But then again,
notice.
I'm hardly on, Yeah. So but that was the most popular series at our public library system for the entire county plus more, because our library system didn't require you to live in the county to be a member. You could join our library for free. So,
did you introduce any of them to Bollywood romance? Because those are usually very sweet, and there's no kissing.
We had a couple Bollywood. We did not have that many, but we had a few Bollywood movies. And for those who had DVD players, I did introduce them. Because I also love the dancing. It's just so joyful. Yeah. It's so much fun. And, the dances aren't usually that hard. There's my favorite, the light bulb. Turn the light bulb.
I just realized 2 of the 4 Bollywoods I own have death in them. And they're romance.
I'm so shocked. If only, I would have never suspected you, Laura.
One of them, they both die, but then one's reincarnated and the other one's a ghost. They have to solve the murder.
I love that trope.
So
I've read that as a romance before, where somebody's trying to solve their own murder.
Yeah.
And they end up in a romance with the
ghost of the other person who died with them. Yes.
Do what you gotta do. Yes, Dastana is the cutest queer romance Bollywood movie ever. I don't think I've watched that one. I definitely want to see it. Yes, please take pictures in Sugar Creek. Someone, Diana, can you do it? Anybody? I need to see pictures. Let me live vicariously through y'all. Because I miss traveling so much. You don't know. But that's just my point of, again, the readers, when I would ask, why do you like this series? Because it's really more like an anthology series. It's written by all sorts of different writers. The themes aren't even the same. Some of them are, your more Amish romance inspiration or Mennonite romantic, which, again, what a wild ride. But some of them are, just inspirational, and they're more your regular romance stuff. And they said, because the premise of Love Finds You In is that love can find you anywhere. At any point in your life, no matter what you're doing, no matter maybe how hard it is to get to you, love can find you there. So love can find you broken down on the side of the road in a state you've never been to before. And you just never know when it'll happen. And they loved that idea of love can find you anywhere. And by the way, I want to point out most of the people who were reading these were married. And I was like, okay. But okay, anyway. But when I asked, why do you like the Love Finds You series? So that I could know better about what other novels to recommend to them. It was always, I love the idea that love can find a person anywhere at any point in their life. That there's no point in your life where you're beyond capable of falling in love with somebody and then falling in love with you back.
Especially when you've stopped looking.
Yes. Yeah, every time at least one or both main characters have stopped looking.
I can say from personal real life experience, it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I mean, I've certainly complained to Tom of like, I ain't gonna find anybody here in this house in a panini. Like, it's never, how will it happen? You know, so much for my plans of, you know, going to the one gay club still left in my state. Like, that was my plan before the panini hit. Once I got strong enough after the hospital. And, you know, he's like, you never know. And I'm like, you sound like the Love Finds You series. And I mean, like, it is kind of a fun premise if you think about it. What is like a situation a person could be in where there's no way you could find someone to love you back? You know, maybe you work nights at a nuclear power plant. You don't ever see anybody.
My brain immediately went to like, there's a nuclear monster that falls in love with you from within the reactor.
I mean, I'm here for Laura's Love Finds You series with Love Finds You a Monster.
That is its own subgenre.
I love it already. Laura, you want a publisher? I am available. Unicorn Council Publishing is very much interested in your premise.
This is the first thought that popped in my head.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's why romance readers keep coming back, is for that, aw, yes, I love it. Whatever it is, including, yes, a monster and a power plant. I don't know. Love Finds You a Monster. Unicorn Council is interested. So, can you imagine? Oh, how fun. But that is sort of, I think, the point of romance novels and romance stories is no matter what's going on in that main character's life, they are not above falling in love, or they're not beyond being able to fall in love and being loved back. And that's a really sweet idea. You know, that sort of helps some, you know, that's it kind of, I could see where it definitely would help readers keep moving forward when they're like, you know what? That's something nice. But yes, it may be Frankenstein's monster. Who knows? Still, as long as you get love back, that's what matters, right?
My heart is aflutter.
There we go.
Boris Karloff, yes.
I mean, he was a pretty handsome dude. So that's I guess what I most love about the romance genre. Too, now that I think about it. Anyone else?
There's always hope.
I need hope. Maybe I should read romance.
Maybe you just need to find your kind, you know, maybe with monsters.
Yeah. Well, see, it's more about finding, you know, the writers and the tropes that, you know, you're looking for and can relate to. Like, that is part of why romance is so popular, is that they are willing to go towards very specific niches that a lot of other genres don't. And so it is a kind of, you know, start whittling your way through of like, what is it you can really relate to and are looking for and like, and seeing, you know, where you can find any groups that are interested in that might be able to help you with recommendations.
Like, I had this dream of a dream as a kid. Like, one day I will find the right person and we will be warriors side by side and we have constellations named after us. I haven't even kissed anybody yet. Like, psh, that's out the window.
I know, it does feel like it, doesn't it? But I think, like, the point of like these kind of hopeful romances is you never know. And when you least suspect it, you might have it. Now, yeah, I mean, like, I see the chat. I see what y'all talk about. I will say that, like, the romances lately, I have thought about, I don't need marriage to be at the end of that. In fact, I told Tom I have no intention of ever marrying again. I did it once. I got it out of my system. I cannot imagine marrying again.
I know some people like that.
Yeah, but, like, that doesn't mean I'm not interested in romance.
Right.
It's just I do not see marriage in the cards for me. At least what I'm interested in at this point. However, I'm not trying to set anything in stone because that seems foolish. That seems like I'm just asking for trouble, quite frankly. So, remember, what was it like? What is it? If you want to make God laugh, make some plans.
Yes.
Or something to that effect. And it's like, yeah. So I try not to set things in stone because I don't wish to dare the universe. I'm just saying what, like, for me. So I think it's perfectly fine to inject a little romance into a story and it not end in marriage or happily ever after. Happy for now is nice. I'm not looking for ever after. I'm just looking for now.
In next cards, punch into my planner because I don't want to write anything down yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just called life experience right there.
That's called the past 2 months.
Mm.
I mean, teenagers should be like, what's wrong with you? And you look back at the teenagers with, I've lived more than you.
Any final thoughts from anybody?
I like Charlie.
None? The process is simple. We're both clicking on it at the same time. Find someone that drives you the right kind of crazy, that you drive the right kind of crazy, and enjoy the chaos. Yeah, I would agree. I feel like that about friendship, too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's always either you're growing together or you're growing apart, but you're always growing. It's just part of being human. So you need to find someone you can grow together with.
Yeah. And even, like, with some of my friends where we technically appear to have grown apart, we also just keep coming back together because we don't want to be apart. We just went in different directions.
Life happened.
Yes.
Basically. But
when
you do get together and you have that feeling that, like, things have changed, but things haven't really changed.
Yeah, people are still the same people, you originally hit it off with. Mm-hmm. People are still the same. It's just a lot of other things have happened in the meantime. Everyone I've been friends with for more than 20 years drifted away because they had kids, they got married, they did all sorts of things, and yet we are still very close friends to this day, but we don't see each other every day or even every week, even though I now have, StreamYard and Zoom and everything. I'm lucky if I see them once a month because life is busy. And we have to make time for each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to make time, due to new jobs or, I don't know,
plague,
global panini.
That panorama.
I said panoramas. I used to love to shoot them.
Panorama ding dong.
So, but, like, that attachment, that closeness is still there. It's just we can't always be together. I don't see why people can't have that with romances as well. Maybe it's just because I'm so independent. I don't know.
Wow.
So,
would
well. Anyone like to do an outro?
Subscribe.
Yes.
Push the like button.
You. I mean, if you'd like to. Yeah, if you'd like to.
Subscribe and also follow on Twitch too.
Thank you. Also, have you met these folks? They're fantastic. That one too. Charlie says, I only have one friend left that I went to high school with, and we drifted apart into the same kind of witchy monstrosity. But when we get together, the chaos is beautifully profound. Yes. Exactly.
Yes, we hope we have been enlightening.
We hope we've been inspiring. Okay, so for next week. Next week is science fiction and fantasy.
Ooh.
The third highest grossing genre category in book sales at this point. And in theory, we may have guests. Who knows? So what are we going to talk about?
During science fiction fantasy?
Writing sci-fi fantasy.
We're going to be talking about tropes again.
Of course we are. I mean, I imagine a lot of people have their favorite tropes, not the least of which is an alien jumps out of somebody's body. Hey, we're just talking about aliens, you know? Or face huggers, right? And I don't know, I'm thinking of like every Doctor Who trope ever.
I'm just thinking of chest bursters.
Oh yeah, chest bursters, good stuff.
But the Spaceballs version, where it can do a song and dance.
Yeah. Hello, my darling.
Good stuff.
Pew pew pew.
Pew pews. You know, everyone's got to make sure to
Okay.
Keep you lock and loaded.
I have attempted to draft a sci-fi.
Okay.
The worst line I've ever written was in my first draft. It was an intense assassination plot where 3 people were getting killed. I literally wrote,
wow.
Pew, pew, pew. All 3 fell down. I'm a genius!
It's good stuff. Is it science fiction if an alien doesn't burst from a body? I mean, like, technically, you don't have to have every trope. But it's nice.
Oh, there's how you cause a divide.
I'm going to go on a limb and say that Charlie is a bit of a Ripley fan. Just maybe a little.
You think so? So, steampunk is this lovely area between science fiction and fantasy. Because fantasy be fantasy, right? And that's where you also
depends on how much science you're putting into the steampunk technology, or if it's just set dressing.
So, and you can also have cyberpunk. You can have all sorts of wonderful stuff. You're going to. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the requirements of fantasy. At least if you're writing to market and you want to keep your readers happy. It's not that dissimilar from romance in that you do need to let your readers know what they're getting into. And to science fiction, a certain amount of letting them know what they're getting into, as well as giving them a few hooks, even in your blurb. Sci-fi is rather dependent on that. As well as if you want to discuss philosophy, sci-fi is a fantastic genre to write in. If you wish to discuss any amount, did you like the show The Good Place? May I recommend science fiction for you to read or to write? Because that science fiction loves to discuss all forms of moral philosophy. And they do it with, electronics, lasers, whatever, aliens. So there's a lot of wonderful reasons to write in science fiction and fantasy genres.
I believe you have a volunteer.
Oh, Oh, tribute, you say? Okay, let me mark them down.
Like, for as much as we are really annoyed with that writer, it's really hard not to use those meme lines of, we have a volunteer. Tribute, you say, tribute.
I appreciate all the contributions of tribute to our little game. So that's what we're going to talk about next week.
Oh, I'm trying not to say the one line.
Say it. Get it out of your system now, or you're going to, like, it's going to...
May the odds be ever in your favor.
There we go. Thank you.
I feel better now.
Yeah, I thought you feel better. I really felt confident.
Like, must, quote, movie.
Must. Yes, and also I do have a Discord server, so please feel free all week to fill it with all your favorite sci-fi fantasy memes if it helps. I know that I will enjoy reading them. We do have several meme sections. We've got memes, we've got cats are plotting, and we heart dogs. I think that we forgot to put in the sweetness one, so we're probably going to put the sweetness one in as well for memeing goodness. All the good stuff. So hopefully you will set your watch, you will set your phone to remind you for next Monday's show, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, sometime in the Pacific. I don't know. And you will join us then. Thank you so much for coming. If you've made it this long into the show, I'm absolutely impressed and I adore you. And I hope I will see you again soon. Oh, and let's see where. Oh, there it is. Okay, so here we go. Bye-bye, everybody.